Hey guys, thanks for tuning back into Pixel Rich Games, where we strive and make it super hard, super fun. In this episode of Elden Ring, we have our second bleed build, and this time around we're dropping Seppuku and picking up Mogwin's Sacred Spear to use and abuse its built-in skill called Blood Moon Ritual. Blood Moon Ritual got a faster cast buff in patch 1.04, which made it even more attractive than it already was. But before we get into more details, let me just go through my shameless plug and say, give your boy some support by subscribing to the channel and liking this video to get YouTube's algorithm to promote the channel. Let's just back up a bit and talk about the weapon first. Mogwin's Sacred Spear is a great spear and it requires 24 strength, 14 dex, and 27 arcane to equip. You can get this weapon by beating Mogwin and trading his remembrance for this armament. In terms of stat scaling, at plus 7, this already reaches its max scaling for both strength and arcane with a C rating. Despite having the same scaling on both stats, arcane yields more DPS, so just keep that in mind. Now let's talk about Blood Moon Ritual. The biggest thing about this skill is how easy it is to make the mistake of assuming that this is all bleed damage. Aside from blood, this also has fire damage, and knowing this will help us pick our gear more effectively. Casting Blood Moon Ritual makes our toon raise the spear up, creating intense blood explosions, and we can do this 3 consecutive times before having to restart the animation. This skill really packs a punch, plus its AoE is pretty wide. The only downside to this is it keeps us stuck in place while pumping the spear like crazy. Given the good and the bad, let's start building around this awesome skill, beginning with picking our talismans. The 4 talismans for this build are pretty much set in stone in my opinion, but let me try to give you some wiggle room and start with what I want to call non-negotiables. The first one, the mandatory talisman that's a must-have for every build that's centered on a damage weapon skill, Shard of Alexander, that buffs the attack power of skills by 15%. The second one is a mandatory for any type of bleed build, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, that gives us another 20% damage buff whenever there's blood loss nearby. Now, the following 2 are highly recommended, but if you would like to swap something out, you should take it from any of these. Don't touch the first 2. Okay, the next talisman is the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. This gives us additional attack power buffs from doing successive attacks. Yep, this works with the consecutive casts of Blood Moon Ritual. And then my last talisman slot goes to the Fire Scorpion Charm. If you didn't know that our weapon skill does fire damage, you probably won't think of picking this up. But now that you do, makes more sense, right? And for those who don't know or remember what this does, it gives 12% more fire damage, but also increases physical damage that we receive by 10%. Now, depending on your playstyle, I have other recommended options that also work well with this build. If you are having issues with FP, you can run the Carrion Filigree Crest that lowers FP cost of skills by a solid 25%. If your problem is stamina, you can go with the Green Turtle Talisman that increases stamina recovery by 15%. Now, in case you want to build with something heavy like the Bull Goat set, Great Jar's Arsenal becomes a very good pick. This adds 19% to our max equip load. And the last one, the Winged Sword Insignia. You can run this while you're still working your way to get its big brother, the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia. You can't use them at the same time, so you'll have to take this out once you get the big bro. Now let's decide on what armor to wear. Since this is a bleed build, getting the white mask is a no-brainer. This headpiece is like the baby sister of the Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman. It gives us a 10% damage buff whenever there's blood loss near us. Aside from the headgear, you can go with anything really. I just wore whatever that kept me on light load. Now again, you can opt for something beefy like the Bull Goat set to get more me time for casting and recasting our weapon skill, but something's gotta give, and that will most likely be damage or stat points. If you choose to go with this option, the Great Jar's Arsenal Talisman becomes a more viable option. Okay, now let's go to our wondrous Physique Setup. I would say the best in slot for this build is the Flame Shrouding Crack tier that buffs fire damage by 20% for 3 minutes. This is closely followed by the Thorny Crack tier that works like our Rotten Wingsword Insignia that buffs our consecutive attacks for 3 minutes. Needless to say, they stack. Now, if you're not sold on any or both these two, you can go with the Strength Not Crystal tier that gives us 10 additional strength for 3 minutes. Again, if you're having stamina issues, you can go with the Green Burst Crystal tier that gives us an additional 33% stamina recovery. If you went with the Heavy Armor route, the Winged Crystal tier can work wonders. This boosts our max load by a whopping 450% for 3 minutes. This will almost guarantee light load. In my Black Flame Tornado build, I just kept my load at heavy so I didn't have to sacrifice a talisman slot to run Great Jar's Arsenal. So when I get to a boss fight or something challenging, I just chuck down Winged Crystal tier flask and I'm light as a feather. Now for a stat build. As I mentioned earlier in the vid, we scale best with Arcane followed by Strength. I recommend aiming for 80 Arcane as top priority. I wouldn't say the same for Strength as Arcane gives us more in terms of damage, so don't go all in on Strength just yet. Just stick with Arcane for now. Vigor is next on the list. Aim for 50 Vigor. You can go as high as 60, but don't go over it because it's just a waste of stat points. Once you have both these down, you can start working on getting 25 Faith that lets us use 2 awesome buffs for this build. At 15 Faith, we unlock Flame Grant Me Strength, a 30-second buff that gives us 20% more fire damage. At 25 Faith, we can start using Golden Vow. This one lasts longer at 80 seconds and gives us 15% more damage and 10% damage negation. After this, you can start working on mine to get more FP for consecutive blood boons. Once you see that your stamina's getting left by your FP, invest some in endurance. Only put more points in a strength once you're satisfied with your FP and stamina. Alright, that's it for me in this episode. I hope you find this guide useful and this build enjoyable. Thanks again for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video to see more content on Elden Ring. Hit that bell to get notified whenever I have a new vid out. See you on the next one. Stay healthy, keep safe, and God bless us all.